Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the 3 of 7 podcast. We've got an interview style episode for you today with a really cool dude named Brian. On Instagram, he's Brian in Search. I had this conversation with Brian quite a while ago. This was a virtual interview, so there's no video with this episode, unfortunately, but it is an awesome conversation where Brian just talks to us about his journey, basically moving from a place in life where he just felt stagnant, just living in kind of, just that feeling of mediocrity, like you're not moving forward or enjoying life to the fullest, to a place where he was experiencing the fullness of life and doing things that he loves and enjoys. Brian's got an awesome blog online called Subjects to Change. I'll attach it in the show notes of this episode. He puts out some great content there and also on his Instagram page. Brian grows a bunch of his own food. He lives down in Florida, so he's got some great weather. Just some awesome content. So I hope you guys enjoy this conversation. A lot of wisdom packed in here. Today's episode was brought to you by Natural Rapport. This is the stuff that we use on our dogs, the treats, the pet essentials, the ear cleaners, the shampoos, right? We love our dogs. They're very important to us, and that's why we use Natural Rapport. They make a full line of uncomplicated pet essentials that are gentle, safe, and effective. They use ingredients that are as close to nature as possible. All their products are made in the USA. Yeah, it's good stuff, man. It's actually the best stuff that you can reward your pets with. It's all safe, and it's good, and they love it. Brooke also loves Natural Rapport because, her dogs, Brooke's my wife, her dogs are her babies, so she's very particular. We're so thankful to have Natural Rapport as a sponsor on the 3 of 7 podcast. If you love your dogs as much as we love ours, go get you some Natural Rapport at nattyrap.com, NATTYRAP.com. Use the pro code 3 of 7 project. That's the number 3 of the number 7 project, all caps, to get 10% off your Natural Rapport purchase. Thank you guys so much. We love you. Here is Brian. Enjoy. Welcome to the 3 of 7 podcast, brother.
Thank you for having me. This is an honor.
Fired up, man. I got so many questions for you. I've kind of, I've been seeing your stuff for quite a while, Brian, for sure. But prior to this episode, when Brooke told me that you had reached out and that you were willing to come on, I've really been digging into your content and especially that Subjects for Change, man. And we're going to talk through that here in a little bit because there's some amazing content on there. It's just so well written, so easily digestible. It's like it's written out in a way that you can read it, understand it, you get the takeaways, and you're done in like 30 seconds. It's perfect, man.
That's it, man. And I love books like that, where it's like it's there, you get it, you don't have to have an advanced degree and read 6 other things to understand what it is that's trying to come across. So, I mean, that means a lot to me.
You're crushing it, brother. You are crushing it. I got a lot out of it. Just reading through. I haven't read through all of them, but I've read through quite a few. So good on you. I got to ask, first question I got for you, Brian, is, so I also have a very strong addiction to peanut butter.
Yes.
And dude, I consume so much peanut butter, dude. It's like a staple of my diet and smoothies, on dates, on waffles. I mean, you name it, dude.
Yeah.
And I was looking,
tasty and healthy.
100%, dude. It's like it hits the spot every time.
Yeah.
It fills you up. It's good for you. At least some of it's good for you.
Right. There's some hidden, a lot of sugar in a lot of that stuff.
100%, man. But I saw a post the other day where you were making your own peanut butter. And of course, I've seen it, I've read through it. But I want you, for the listeners, tell us how to make our own peanut butter, man.
Okay. So I shop at Aldi's. That's our favorite grocery store. Good quality, inexpensive groceries. I buy one 16-ounce can of the cocktail peanuts that have a little bit of salt on them. It's like $1.79 for those. I put them in the oven, and my oven has a warm and hold setting, so it's really low. It's probably like 225 degrees. And I just put them in there, and I've put them in for 5 minutes, and I've put them in for 30 minutes and forgotten about it, being busy with being at home and working and everything. And they've come out fine. So the goal there is you're not trying to cook the peanut. You're not trying to get any color into the peanut, but you're just trying to kind of bring them back to life, get some of those oils, kind of get them, happy and warmed up again. And then I put them in a food processor. We have a nice, high tech, super, high horsepower blender, and it just doesn't seem to work that well because it kind of gets down at the bottom and it doesn't really. You need more area. So put it in the food processor. Put it on mix, and probably for about 2 minutes or so. And then I add about maybe a little bit less than a quarter a cup of coconut oil while the food processor is running, because then you get a better emulsification as it's going. And then, at the end, I might add a little bit of maple syrup, maybe like a teaspoon or two at most. And then a little, probably about another teaspoon and a half of cinnamon. Give it another quick buzz. And then, man, you're eating some pretty epic peanut butter. And then you can kind of, if you want it really, really smooth, let it go longer. I kind of like it because it's kind of, and it like grainy sounds like such a weird word because that's never like a good, it's not a good description for food, but I kind of like it because it's kind of gritty. And sometimes like there's big chunks of peanut in it, and that's like such an awesome welcome surprise for texture and everything like that. But it's such a huge difference. And when you look at like what we were spending on store-bought peanut butter a week to like feed that, addiction, it was like $20 a week for peanut butter. And, doing it this way, I might spend, it's probably $5 or $6 a week on peanut butter, and I know exactly everything that's going into it.
Yeah, that's a big time savings, man. And yeah, I'm like I said, I'm a big peanut butter consumer, so I'm actually going to make my first batch tomorrow, man.
Nice.
And
what's really good too is, so take that peanut butter, make it, and then slice up an apple and a little bit of cayenne, mix some cayenne pepper in with your peanut butter, and then dip like a Granny Smith apple in it for like a little afternoon snack.
No kidding, man.
That's good living. Yeah, because then you got like sweet and spicy, salty, peanut buttery kind of thing. Oh yeah, it's a life changer.
I got to try that out, dude. Good recommendation. I'm glad I asked that question, man. Yeah. I love it, brother. All right, so if the listeners, if you don't get anything else out of mine and Brian's conversation, at least you now know how to make your own peanut butter and save a bunch of money if you eat as much as me and Brian do. So
yes. Awesome.
Peanut butter is a runner's, especially an ultra runner's dream, son. So awesome, brother. All right, let's dig into this thing. Thank you for that. Starting it off with some good actionable knowledge that people can take and use in their own home to make themselves healthier. And, I think that's a good place to start on that, making yourself healthier. And, kind of read through your bio, Brian, and you talked about you were in a place in life where you really weren't at rock bottom, but you just weren't happy with where you were. And I wonder if that may just be described as you were kind of stuck in that mediocrity. That's what I was
stagnant.
Yeah, man.
Was kind of just,
and so many people are stuck in that in life, and it's crazy because it just takes a little bit to go from mediocrity to that next level, whatever you want to call it, excellence, whatever you want to call it. It just takes a little bit of effort in a couple different buckets, and you can go to that next level, man. So tell me about, first of all, you were stuck in that place of kind of mediocrity, being stagnant. When did you come to that realization, and when did you get sick of it, man?
So it's kind of funny because it happened. It was a Monday morning, and I was down at the trash can taking the trash out, for Monday morning. And one of my neighbors was walking through the neighborhood, and I'm a surfer too, and he knows it because I walked past his house to get down to the beach. And, he asks me, how were the waves this weekend? And I said, they were pretty good. And but I said I just didn't really surf that great. I wasn't feeling it. I just didn't have it. I wasn't where I wanted to be. And I said it was kind of a bummer. It was just kind of tough. I was throwing some I didn't think I had the right board. It was wintertime. I had my wetsuit on, excuse. And then we got to talking about this other guy that lives in the neighborhood, and his name's Dave, and he's like, and I said something about, Dave was out there and he was surfing really good. And he goes, yeah, Dave's awesome. He goes, he's older than I am. And I was like, it was kind of mind blowing to me. And it was that realization that right there that, all I've ever wanted to do when I grew up was be a surf bum and live across the street from the beach and be able to surf whenever I wanted to. And, that moment of, is what I'm doing right now, what I've done over the last 5, 6, 8 years of my life has gotten me to this point. If I continue down this path, I'm going to get to that point in my life where, I can retire and be a surf bum, but then I'm not going to be able to surf, and I'm not going to be able to do the things that I physically want to be able to do with my time as I get older. And then that was like the light bulb moment where it was like, what I'm doing now is not going to get me to where I want to be in the future.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And so that was a distinct moment for you that you had born out of that simple conversation with some dude in your neighborhood. And that's how a lot of times stuff like that in life, that's how it works, man. It's not always some drastic thing. It's just, it's something as simple as that. And so what was the first steps that you, go ahead, Brian.
Yeah, I was going to say it was kind of going all right, what am I going to do to change? Okay. I'm at the crossroads.
Yeah.
This path hasn't worked, or I see that this path isn't working. How do I go off in a different direction? And it was the first thing that I did was I stopped. I paid attention to what I was eating sugar wise.
Okay.
And just trying to consume less and less added sugar in my diet, not trying to drink sugar, trying to cut down on my alcohol consumption, which that took a while, and I finally kind of got there. Mm-hmm. But it was small, actionable things. And then, so it was that. And then it was, this was probably about a month later. It was coming into the New Year's. And I said, I'm not going to, I have a job in sales. I'm in a car all the time. I'm driving, I'm home every night, but I'm in the car, 3-4 hours a day.
Yeah.
And it was I'm not going to listen to the radio anymore. I'm not going to listen to the radio in a sense. I'm not going to listen to music. I'm not going to listen to talk radio. I'm going to take these 3 or 4 hours a day that I have in this unique opportunity where I'm in a car to drive, and I'm going to take advantage of listening to podcasts, and I'm going to listen to books on tape, and I'm going to educate myself on these topics that became of interest. And one book turns into something else, and somebody says something else, and then it just has staggered and gone on. And I think the vast majority of my success is taking knowledge from those podcasts and books and implementing them into my life. Mm-hmm. And I mean, it's just you and so many other people, and you talk about it, tools. You hand out the tool to somebody, and then they run with it, and then they change their life. And that's what it's been for me, is continuously wanting to learn.
Yep. Well, and too, a big thing I'm hearing in that, Brian, is you immediately started managing input. And input by meaning the things that you are putting in your mouth to feed your body, and then managing the input from, whatever the outside source is, whatever the media source is, and to in turn feed your soul and spirit with good food, So
Yeah.
managing that input is huge, man. And that's one of the main things when people ask me about self-talk, which is a different subject than spoken word. But how do you manage your self-talk and improve your internal conversation? And managing input is a huge part of that, man. But that takes discipline. And one thing that you wrote in your bio was drastic commitment to sticking to that change. Drastic commitment. When I see that word drastic, that's a bold word, man. So explain to me what that drastic commitment means to
Yeah.
you.
And so like, I think a lot of times, when you go like, diet, exercise, everything in life, I'm never going to do this again. Never is a really, really, really long time. And, I had done some diets in my past in my life where it was like, okay, I'm not going to eat chips and I'm not going to drink beer. And those things, like you start out with that determination and it's a big, huge, giant goal. And you're like, I'm going to do this. But then, that motivation, it runs out. And then you're stuck going like, man, I really want, chips and beer or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
But it was, how I got to where I am now with my health was drastic commitment to one small thing at a time and going, okay, when I finally kicked drinking beer, it was, I'm only going to drink beer on Friday and Saturday, and I'm not going to have beer in my house.
Mm-hmm.
If I want a beer bad enough, I'm going to ride my bicycle to the gas station and get one beer. Because if there's a bunch of beer in your house, you're going to drink it, or chips, or insert your vice of pleasure. But when you make those things and you kind of slowly chip away at it, and it's like, it's like a win. Like you need to set yourself up for easy wins. And it's like, okay, I'm not going to drink, beer, or I'm not going to eat cookies or something like that. It just slowly chip away at it. If you drink a beer a day, how can I drink a beer every other day? And then 2 weeks from now, I'm going to only drink beer on the weekend. And then a month from now, I'm going to drink one beer, and just have that drastic commitment to, I know what I need to do and I know it's going to make a difference, but I'm going to slowly eliminate those things in our diet. Cause it's like, if you come out and go like, hey, I want to be like Chadd and, win a last man standing race, and you've never run an ultra marathon before, like, you're not going to, like, I think everybody realizes like, that's not going to happen.
And it's unhealthy.
Right. Yeah. Drop of a hat. It's just that slow, steady commitment. And really, I think like understanding and finding your why for what you're, why you want to lose weight. Like my why was initially, I want to be able to surf when I'm 65 years old. That was it. And that was enough of a motivation to kind of get me started down the path. And it's evolved as I've gotten older and have had kids, but you have to have a reason beyond, I want to look good with my shirt off, because that's not a long-term motivation. At least it isn't for me.
I agree 100%, man. And that why is something that I think has been talked about quite a bit. It's been, having that why, I think a lot of people know that is essential, but a lot of people don't understand how to find that why, man, and that it can evolve, and that you can actually figure out your why in the midst of the journey. And it's funny because you mentioned that last man standing race that we did last weekend, and I didn't have a why. I didn't have a why going into that race, and I didn't need a why until it got tough. Right? About 2, 3, 4 a.m. When you were sneaking up on that 24-hour mark and the sun hadn't rose yet, and it was just in the midst of the darkest dark of the night, I started thinking about, I've got to have a why now, because it's getting hard. And, I got to thinking about it, and my why for that specific event was the guys that were there with me. Jesse and Mark, they were really my why. It's like these are my brothers. They've came here. They expect me to be the best that I can possibly be today, and to to uphold that example for our team.
Yeah.
And that became my why. It's as simple as that. It wasn't any grand thing. It had nothing to do with victory. It had nothing to do with any of that. It was just my brothers. You know what I mean? But it's crazy how that developed in the midst of the journey. You don't necessarily have to understand your why. At least me personally, I don't have to understand what my why is right off the bat. It's just like, I know I need to do this because it's going to improve my life, and I can figure out the why along the journey. And that's not for everybody. That's just for me. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
But it is
and
important.
Mine, it developed from, wanting to surf to, I've got an almost 5-year-old and an almost 2-year-old. And I want to be happy and healthy. And I want to be, like, people always go like, oh, soon you're not going to be able to keep up with your kids. Like, I want my kids to not be able to keep up with me. And I want to be there for them for as long, as humanly possible. I'm very thankful to have, my parents live, 3 miles up the road from us, and we see them all the time, and they're an important part of our life and our kids' life. Mm-hmm. And, my wife and I's sanity, to be able to get away. I mean, as much as we love them, it's awesome to have them so close. And it's, I'm very thankful for my parents. And when we, I started on this journey, and then, and then it led to my parents, making some changes in their life. Mm-hmm. And then, my wife joined a CrossFit gym last year, and she's in, absolutely amazing shape. And, collectively between like 5 people, we've lost like 130 pounds, but it's just been, little bit. And it's just, I want my parents to be here as long as possible for me and my kids.
I love it, brother. So yeah. And so as the journey grows, and as the mission grows, and as your commitment to becoming a better human being, body, soul, and spirit, as that grows, the why grows with it, along with life. That why can continue to shift and grow. And I think it's cool to be open to that and to constantly reassess that. You know what I mean? That's awesome, brother. I want to talk real quick about taking care of yourself, and I call it keeping your own ship in order. What does that mean to you, Brian? I think that's something that you're really passionate about.
Yeah, and I think for me, it's eating right. I know when I eat right, I feel better. Mm-hmm. 100%. And when I feel better, I perform better, like from a physical standpoint, but I'm better at work. My mind is sharper. I'm doing a better job, and then it's, I think, as men, there's that traditional, like, protector, provider for the family. And it's just, I want to be there, I want to be the best version of myself for my family. And if I'm eating well, and then I'm doing good. And two, I think there's the balance point of, so that's the physical part. The mental part is, I've got to have time away from my wife and kids. And I think, as part of this whole, pandemic lockdown thing, I think that's become even more obvious for the majority of people who are spending exponentially more time at home. And it's, my wife's got her time where she goes to the gym or she goes out into the garage. She does her thing for an hour and a half out in the garage. I'm watching the kids. We're having fun playing games and everything like that. And we're working out how we're both getting that time to be, away from each other, but doing what we need to do, physically and emotionally to work out the day's stresses and get ourselves, right. And then really too, like, we found a really amazing church, three and a half years ago, and just, going and doing that every week. And, that's evolved too as part of this. And it's like now, I strap on my rucksack on Saturday evenings, and, Father Phil and I go for a walk for an hour and a half. But it's just, so much of it is going like, time can kind of be manufactured. It's just a matter of figuring out how to do it. And it's like, I'm not trying to, I don't run away right after dinner, but I'm going for walks or runs or doing my daily exercise routine at 8:30, 8:45 at night every night. The kids go to bed, and then that's my hour to go do, what I need to do. And I know when I'm doing all of those things, like Brian, for the most part, is running on all, 4 cylinders or on all 8 cylinders. Man, I don't want to be a four bang. I don't want to be a Toyota. I want to be an F-150.
I was about to say, if you're a Toyota, you're good, brother.
But it's just, it's a lot of simple things.
Well,
but if I'm not here and I'm not taking care of myself, and life is, so much of life is gambling with the future. All of these things that I do today are in an effort to get me to where I want to go, so that I'm happy, healthy, and able to be as epic as I want to be at 70 years old.
Yep.
I don't know, nobody knows what's going to happen tomorrow. I don't know. But if I'm just trying to do everything that I can do to be there as much as I can be, in the best version of myself for my family for as long as possible.
No, that's right, brother. And, essentially the word selfish, when you hear the word selfish, it has a lot of times negative connotations around it. But in all reality, we as human beings, we have to have our selfish time. We have to be selfish sometimes. And in turn, you taking that time to yourself, not only physically, but also, spiritually and, emotionally, that's the best gift that you can in turn give to everyone in your life.
Exactly.
Is that period of selfishness is there's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah.
So I agree with you 100%.
And I think it's balancing it out, and it's figuring out how to do it in an effort that isn't, massively invasive to my family life.
There you go.
Because I don't want to, it's like, I don't want to just run away, from my wife and kids and go like, oh, dad's got to go to the gym, and would I like to work out at 6:30, 7 o'clock at night? Yeah. But it's like, and it's kind of evolved because, when it was just my son, he slept awesome. And I would get up at 5 o'clock in the morning and go for walks and runs and do all my exercise then. As we had a second kid and that evolved, and she didn't sleep as well and would wake up earlier in the morning, I just started working out at 9 o'clock at night. It's an ever evolving kind of cycle of things. And one of the other things, so, I do every day, and this is kind of my challenge to everybody. I started at the beginning of this year. I do my age in pull-ups, push-ups, and squats every single day. So I haven't missed a day since January 1st. That takes, 12 minutes if I'm just kind of cruising and not doing it particularly fast. But you've got a push, a pull, and a squat. You've got your 3 major muscle groups. Mm-hmm. So, a lot of days I'm going out for runs or I'm going out for rucks. There's a couple of days a week where I just go out and do that. And my wife knows, like, hey, 10, 15 minutes later, Brian, goes out in the garage, does his thing for a little bit of time, shut it down, get my mind right, work through my stuff, come back in, but it's just that relentless dedication to something small. Yep. That over an extended period of time will really, really pay off. And I think that's so often in life, we kind of go, I want it now. And, that works for cheeseburgers, but it doesn't work for, long-term, growth in your body.
That's right, brother. That's right. And I think it's so cool that you just put that out. You're doing the number of years of your age, push up, pull up, and sit up every day. That's something in your daily routine that sounds like it's non-negotiable.
No, it happens.
Yeah,
every day. I mean, I've done pull-ups because I've slacked off and didn't do it during the day. I've done pull-ups in the rain outside, and
there you go.
My mom's going to listen to this, so I'm sorry. But I mean, I've done it, dodging, thunderstorms and lightning strikes kind of close, and that'll make you do some pull-ups pretty fast.
I heard that, brother. I bet it will. And I think that's important to have something in your life that is non-negotiable, whatever you have identified as that important thing, that important piece of every day that you have to live. For me, it's getting up and spending time in God's Word. That's me personally. That's where I find the most value and the most growth for me personally every day. And this is a personal thing, but that's my non-negotiable thing.
Yep.
And it's good to have something like that, something that's unwavering, something that you can depend on. At times it can be a reset, but at times it's just practicing that discipline. It's just building that discipline with a simple action like that. Like me, when I spend time in God's Word, it's probably about the same amount of time you spend doing your thing, 10 to 12 minutes, man. And but it's a standard, and it's a practice of discipline, something I can depend on, and it's something I find value in, and it's non-negotiable.
Yeah.
So,
and I think for everybody listening, it's like those first 2 weeks are tough. Anytime you start something new and you go, I'm going to do this every day, those first 2 weeks are tough. Then it gets easy, and then, like you said, it's like I couldn't. Like a couple of weeks ago, I think it was a Saturday night. It was had some work to do. Kids had gone to bed, did some work. Started writing. In my blog, kind of doing some things, and then it was like 11:50, and I was like, I haven't done it yet. And then it was like, went outside, banged out the pull-ups, and just got everything done right before midnight. But it was just like that sense of like, oh my, I almost missed it.
yeah.
And like, it's like, who's gonna, like, there's nobody there to self-police it.
Mm-mm.
But it's, you can't say that you've done pull-ups, push-ups, and squats every day of the year. And it's like, like if when you cheat, you're cheating yourself. And that's a small thing, but
it starts with small things, man. So it's not only a practice in discipline; it's also a practice in what I call unwavering integrity. And I've always been one to say that integrity starts, just like you're saying, with the small things, the putting your grocery cart away at the grocery store. Something as simple as that. So you're practicing that integrity, and you build upon it, man. And that's the way it works. I want to talk real quick, Brian, referencing a really powerful blog post that you wrote. And you talked about finish lines. There is no finish line. I titled it, There Is No Finish Line Perspective. So that is the perspective, being there is no finish line. I want you to talk us through that real quick, man, because that's something that's been on my heart, especially today during my workout. I thought through that, and it's kind of weird that we're having this conversation today. And then I found that blog post that you wrote, and it was just all really timely. So.
Yeah. And a lot of that, it kind of came from the talk with you and Ian, which I had, listened to a really, really long time ago when you kind of talked about it. But then there was that recent one where you were on, interviewing him, and really just kind of thinking about, because I'm running a 12-hour race.
Awesome.
In about a month, August 1st. And, I had a goal distance in my mind. Mm-hmm. And I was like, I'm going to run this far because I need to run this far to qualify for this next race. And, like, I should be able to run that far, but I'm going to have a bunch of time left over. And I remember kind of like thinking that and going like, okay, what happens when you get to that perceived space, goal, destination, in your life? And, like Ian kind of talked about it. He got to 100 miles, like, but in that 100 miles was like, that's the goal. That's the goal. That's my why. I'm trying to get there. I'm trying to get there. I'm trying to get there. And then, he gets to 100 miles and then it's like, you shut it down and go into coast. Hey man, I've arrived. I'm here. I did it. And, you celebrate and then it's too hard. It's like, to me, when I do my ultra races, like, I don't want to sit down. I don't want to stop because I know that chair looks pretty comfy and I might die in it if I stop. And it just kind of got me going and thinking like, man, I wonder how much further, if he would have said, I bet I can run 120 miles, could he have made it 120 miles? And to me, like, not trying to like take anything back. I've never run 100 miles. The furthest I've ever run is 32 miles, 31 point something in a 50K. So I got nothing to, that man's awesome. I want to run with him. I want to run with him and I want to run with you one day and see how far I can run. Because like that podcast, man, I was so pumped listening to that podcast. And then, last week when you did the recap with Jesse and Mark after, kind of breaking down your thought process on that race, man, I was like, I want to go now. I'm ready. I was so fired up to run. I mean, it was awesome. And this is kind of off topic, but like, you were talking about, your race pace and everything like that. And it's just like, some things are so true in life. And it's like, you were the tortoise. It was the tortoise and the hare. And that's how you won that race. I mean, a tale as old as time, forever. You just plodded along. Everybody else, got out and ran super fast. And you said, this is my plan and I'm just going to go. And it's like, that's a song that I hear my daughter listening to on YouTube 3 times a day while we're working from home.
Yeah, it's a principle of nature, man. There's a few principles out there that they are just they're timeless, really, and they work every time, all the time, if you can execute that principle properly.
Yeah, and so like you said, it was one. How did you ran out 126 miles?
No,
something like that.
So that was at the one with Ian, the one we did last weekend. I don't know exactly how far I ran, something like 97 or 98 miles. And then it was like 33 or 35,000 feet of elevation gain. Yeah. So the elevation gain was really more impressive than the mileage was,
Yeah. But it was, that race doesn't have an end. I mean, theoretically it could go on for forever, but it's like, I'm just going to run one lap at a time. And the goal is, if I can run one, can I run two? There's never a finish line. And to me, it's like, if you get to a point in your life where you think that you've arrived someplace, you might as well be standing still, going backwards and dying.
Amen because to that.
Life, and it sounds, and I said it in that thing, it's so cliche, but life is a never-ending adventure. It's a mission towards something, and you just like, there's one finish line, I think, and nobody knows what's on the other side of it. I'm trying to get there, to go be with God, but I want that finish line to be a long time from now. But I'm not going to stop learning. I'm not going to stop running, and just continuously, and I had a conversation last night with Dave, the guy who lives in my neighborhood, who's a surfer. And we were talking about, it's summertime here in Florida. The waves are junk, but, I told him, I said, hey, I'm going to take the fins out of my longboard and I'm going to learn how to surf finless. Because that's a challenge. I've been a surfer for 25 years. I kind of figured it out. Those days that are knee high, they're not that fun because it's not a challenge, because I've got that, mastered. But you take a fin out of a surfboard, there's a new challenge. There's something new to try to master in my life. Like, okay, I'm a surfer. How can I get better? Yep. How can I, just keep continuously pushing myself? Because I feel like you stay young, things become a challenge, and it's just, it's ever evolving. The other thing too, and I saw this quote after I wrote that blog post, but the comedian Louis C.K. said, you don't get to say you're bored. that's such a useless thing to say.
Mm-hmm.
Like how much of you've seen a lot more of the world than I have, but even still, that percentage is really, really small. And what is in your mind? How much of that have you explored? It's just a completely useless thing to say, and it's like that just motivates me to want to keep learning about new things and taking advantage of podcasts and Audible and YouTube as an effort to continuously just improve and learn more stuff.
100%, brother. I couldn't agree with you anymore. And that finish line thing is it was just on my mind so much today, and I was thinking about either you can call it a finish line, or you can. I was thinking about it in my head today as winners. So you're essentially, if you've crossed a finish line and you've achieved your goal, you are a winner, right? There's a lot of winners in the world, whether they came in first place or they achieved their own personal goal, right? So there's two types of winners, though. So we got a lot of people that are considered winners in the world, but there's two types. There's one man or woman that wins, they achieve victory, and they decide, like you said, that they've arrived. They get comfortable, they relax, they take a wrap off, right? There's another type of winner that when they achieve victory, all the victory does is makes them more hungry. That's all it does. Because that second type of winner, when you achieve victory and you cross that finish line, you say, man, I achieved this. I won. I beat everybody else here. What more could I have what more could I have done? Like, I want to do more. Like, it just makes you so hungry. And a lot of people will say, well, the real growth happens in failure and in the times that you don't achieve your goals. And you hear a lot of stories of people that don't achieve their goals, and that's what lights a fire in them. That's what makes them hungry, okay? That happens. That happens quite often. But it should also happen, and for me personally, it happens on a larger scale in victory.
Yeah.
So, like I won this race last weekend. There's not a single thought in my mind right now to relax and be comfortable. I literally have a fire burning in me from that victory. That's probably one of the hottest fires that's been burning in me in quite a while. And it's been 7 days since I ran that race, and I did 4 workouts today. Like, I worked out for 6 straight hours today.
You're the man, Chadd.
I did bike, run, bike, strength. And it's and it's like it's been at least 2 a days since 3 days after the race.
Yeah. Well, and I think sometimes too, that's more than I would do, but so often, people do something like that so extreme, or extreme for what it is for them, and then you just kind of stop. And you need to get that, like your body, it needs to start moving again.
Yeah.
Like if you run a 50K, 100K, whatever, a half marathon or whatever is, your extreme distance, get out the next day and do some exercise and get your body moving again. Because if you take too long, it's like, it's another form of dying in the chair. Yep. And I think too, like I kind of thought, I've got some goals in my mind. I want to run 100K before I turn 40. I'm 37. I think I'm on track to do that much sooner than 40. So what are the goals? Now that I've kind of, I've achieved more than I thought I would in a short period of time, I've got to reassess and figure out where I'm going so that, when I run a 100-mile race, hopefully maybe, next year or before I turn 39, then what? There's still a lot of things that I want to do. And there's a lot of things I still got a lot of time left to do them, you know? And it's like, you come, you know, I'm amazed you come to these ultra marathon races and it's like, if you're 36, you're young.
Oh yeah.
You know, it's like, that's the bottom, you know, you're a baby in those things, and you run with some people that are, you know, 60, 70 years old, and they're beating you. And you're like, I remember like the first time I showed up to an ultra marathon trail race, 6-hour one, I was like, what's going on?
Yeah. I know it, man.
Like this old grandma beat me by a lot.
I see that every time I go to a race, man. You see so many people out there that, you know, if you're not part of that community, you look at them and you say, "There's no way."
Yeah.
And then you see a lot of people with the chiseled six packs and, you know, super lean, super light, best gear, and you see them crumble, man. It's you cannot judge a book by its cover in that sport. And I think that's a big encouragement to a lot of people out there. People don't, man, we don't understand. An overwhelming majority of our society does not even come close to grasping their capabilities.
Exactly.
Not even close, dude.
Yep.
It's like you, in my opinion, personally, I'm not even in my prime yet. I don't feel like I will hit my prime for another decade. And most people would look at me and think that that's crazy.
Yeah.
But I've learned that from guys around me in the ultra running community. I've learned that from guys around me in the SEAL teams. And man, when you get some age on you, those muscles, if you stay on it, those muscles
take care of yourself.
Yeah, they turn into sinew, dude. And then you're just unstoppable, man.
Yeah. Well, and I think you've got a lifetime of experience and just the ability, like mental fortitude and ability to push through. And I think that speaks volumes to why you see, you know, an older demographic in these ultra marathons, because, you know, I didn't, you know, like I ran 5Ks, you know, in my 20s, and you go like, oh, hey, run a marathon or 30 miles or 50 miles. And I tell people that too. And they're like, you know, like, cannot compute. I don't understand, you know, the words that are coming out of your mouth, but it's just, man, it's awesome. And like somebody asked me about it and they're like, you know, why do you run that far? Or why don't you run listening to music? And it's like, man, if you run, there's something that happens at like, you know, 19, 20 plus miles in on a run, and you know you still got a long way to go. Like there's something, you know, like that happens to your brain, and you know, it's I don't even know how to describe it, and I'm sure you can too, but it or maybe you can, or maybe you can't. I don't know, but it's just like you find out so much about yourself when you've pushed yourself that far and you know you still have a long way to go. Like that's my favorite part about really, really long runs, is like what am I going to uncover deep in my brain that's always been there, but I never had enough time to unwrap it.
Yep, that happens to me too, man. I go through phases in a long run. And, you know, the first phase is kind of the excitement and the adrenaline and the, you know, just looking forward to the run. And then the second phase would be that deep kind of introspection that you're talking about, where you're uncovering these things about yourself, and, you know, you're practicing your tools, and, you know, and then the third phase, which is only reached for me in the 100+ mile range, is that steady state. And when you reach that steady state, when I reach it, it's just the most pure form of being a human that you can possibly be. You've transcended introspection. You've transcended your own thoughts. You've transcended your own expectations of your capabilities. And you are in what's called this, I call it the steady state, and you can go indefinitely until your body's eventually going to shut you down. Your body, something's going to snap, something, the stomach's going to blow up, something is going to shut you down. But until that happens, it's just the most beautiful sense of being alive and as a human that I've ever experienced. And that's probably why I like that distance more than any other distance out there. And yeah, that's cool to talk through those phases that we go through in those runs, though, man. I've never sat down and hashed that out.
Yeah. And you know, like I want to run real far in 12 hours. And between like that conversation with Ian and then, you know, the recap of that race last week, there's so many things that you've said, you know, tools that you've given me that have just kind of completely rethought my whole thought process for that race. And I'm really excited.
I'm going to be watching. You better make some Instagram posts.
I will. There'll be 12 hours. There's plenty of time.
Yeah. And I'm going to be running on August 1st too.
Nice.
So
I ran that race last year in the 6 hour, and it's not, you know, it's in Flagler County. You know, you were Flagler Beach, you know, you're a couple hundred yards off the beach. So from an elevation gain, it's not much. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's flat, but what we make up for, what we don't have in elevation, we make up for in heat and humidity.
Oh yeah.
And like, that's the most important thing that I've learned from that race last year was I ran really strong for the first 4 hours. And then I just didn't have a good enough game plan. That was my first ever ultra marathon.
Okay.
I was kind of like, I'm just going to run and I'm going to see what happens. And, you know, 4 hours into, you know, 95 plus degrees with heat and humidity and everything like that. And,
oh yeah.
You know, my body said, all right, Brian, we're not doing this anymore. And, you know, so much of my training and just general pushing through and all the rucking that I've done, you know, helped me. I couldn't run, but I could walk at a really fast pace, and I never stopped. You know, I'd stop at the aid station, I'd get a drink, and I'd just keep on going. Yep. And people were like, how are you, like, you know, like they knew I was broken down, but there was people who were running and I was walking almost as fast as they were. So it was just, I wasn't gonna quit. I was just gonna keep going. So, you know, I've got a lot more experience in me from a year ago, and a ton more, you know, tools and wisdom from you and books and everything else that I've read and learned, and just personal experiences, and really not looking at that race as a failure, but, you know, an opportunity to learn.
Yep.
And just keep going.
That's exactly what it is, man. And after every one of these races, you'll see, and I'm sure you've experienced it before, but you know, the well that is within you, that well that you tap when you go to write your blog posts after these races, like you're saying, you look at it as a opportunity to learn, and then that well just begins to overflow with new content that you never even knew was within you. Yeah. And that is exactly what happens at every one of these events. And that's one of the most beautiful things about it. And I want to transition real quick into, we've talked about your blog on here quite a bit. I want to talk about it. First of all, I want to talk about the name Subjects to Change. Where'd that come from, brother?
So I think, you know, it's kind of funny because I was thinking about this. You know, this is going to be a blog post, and it'll be a kind of a cool opportunity to think about it and talk about it a little bit more. But like most good things in life, it started at a bar. So I was with some friends, and we were talking about this restaurant that has changed names and themes a bunch of times. And this guy goes, you know, he should just call it Subjects to Change, and that way he wouldn't have to, or Subject to Change, and then that way he wouldn't have to, you know, come up with a new sign and a new menu and everything like that. And I just thought, like, man, that's so true and so funny. And I was like, and I told him, I said, man, that's genius. I love it so much. I go, I might eventually use that somewhere down the road. And he goes, yeah, man, whatever, get after it. And, you know, a little bit of time had kind of gone past, and I was thinking about, you know, starting a blog and writing down some of the stuff that I was thinking about. And it was just like, what am I going to call it? What am I going to call it? What am I going to call it? And then, subjects to change kind of came about, like front of mind. And it was, it's so many things, because that blog and my Instagram page are kind of like running, cooking, backyard gardening. Here's something I'm doing with my kids, like, here's what I think about this. This is what about that, and it's like, so the blog is inherently, it doesn't have, a very specific one topic.
Yep.
So there's a lot of different subjects that we're going to cover in that blog. So that fits there. And then, we as human beings, and kind of going back to, there is no finish line. We are subjects to change. And it's just, that constant, I'm going to grow, I'm going to evolve. The Brian that's here right now is pretty good. I think the Brian that's here next year could be a lot better. And I'm here and willing to change and continuously learn, and just keep, it's redundant there, but like evolving into being a better version of ourselves, and getting there, and then going like, this Brian's pretty awesome. I'll bet the next Brian can be even better.
Mm-hmm.
And that kind of, like, we talked about like the journey and understanding your why, that kind of understanding of subjects to change, like, came about, I think last night or this morning, was the next kind of logical explanation for where that name title came from.
That's awesome, man. That's awesome. And I subscribe to your same style. I don't pigeonhole myself with one specific thing. And I think that's why I was so attracted to your blog and your Instagram page, is because it covers so many different topics. Like I said, you're growing all this awesome food. It looks like right there in your backyard, and
yeah, man,
you're talking through how you're coaching people on how to do that, how to utilize the things that they grow, how to prepare it. And then it switches to ultra running, then it switches to family life. It's just, and I'm the same way, man. And what that is to me, that is being a multi-dimensional person. And resiliency, in my opinion, lies in being multi-dimensional. So if you pigeonhole yourself to one specific topic, you might be really, really good. You may be the expert on that one thing, but you are not going to be resilient, because you've put all your eggs in that single basket. So I love that style. I'm the same way with my stuff. It's like, one day I may be out on the range doing tactical stuff. One day I may be running. I might be biking. I might be sitting somewhere on a mountaintop just hanging out. I mean, I love that, man. And that's the lesson in that.
Yeah. When you've got so many, like, my life isn't boring, and it's like this whole like backyard farm thing kind of came out of like, hey, we eat a lot of fresh fruits and vegetables. Who knows what's going to happen? I'm home a lot more than I used to be.
Mm-hmm.
And who knows what's going to happen? And it was like, hey, maybe we're not going to the grocery store 4 or 5 times a week. And it's something that I've always wanted to do. Was I've got a decent amount of land in my backyard, and it was always like, I'm gonna start a farm. I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna grow my own vegetables. And life got busy, got in the way. It just never happened. And then suddenly there was kind of this like, more of a driving force to make it happen. And I've learned a lot. There's a lot of stuff that we planted that looked good that hasn't come to fruition. And just, it's another chapter in my life of things that I've learned a ton about through, I'm kind of working on a blog right now, and it'll probably be out, but it was talking about like, this is the second golden age of communication. It's never been this easy to learn from other people.
Yeah.
Because like, outside of this format, the likelihood of me ever meeting you and understanding like, don't die in the chair, the power of the spoken word, staying positive while you're out on a run, I never would have gotten that. Like maybe somebody randomly I would have run into, a different version of you on a trail race. maybe not.
Yeah.
And, would I love this, and would I have that positivity? And, it probably wouldn't have happened. So it's so amazing that we have this opportunity to be able to share wisdom. And, my goal in life is, man, I would love for one person to get something out of what I've said, and give them a tool and have them make huge changes in their life. And if I impact one person, that's amazing.
Yep.
That's the goal. And I'm so thankful for this opportunity. But so much of who I am is, you and some of your other Navy SEAL brothers who have podcasts and just books, and just taking all of that stuff, and getting in. This is free, man. It's free. It's
Yeah.
there. It's so accessible. And people want to tell you. And it's like, how many amazing mentors could you get in your life if you were lucky enough to just randomly find that person who was into the same thing that you were, and exists in the same town, neighborhood, in time that you're there? I mean, it's impossible, but we have this digital format that's so amazing, that can make changes in your life. And it's like, so much of what I am today is because of that goal, that 4 years ago, when I said, hey, I'm going to use that time to make myself better in the car.
Yep. Well, I think it's definitely, that plays a part in it, Brian, but I think, the biggest part, man, is, yes, you were intentional about, again, controlling and managing that input, but then you decided to take the initiative to put the stuff that you were taking in to practice in real time. And you're taking the initiative to put yourself in environments where those things that you're learning, you have to use them, and you have to build your faith in them. And that's all part of the process, man. And I'm like you, brother. I'm so thankful for the way that we're able to share with one another. You'll never hear me bash social media, because it's like, it's all about how you use it. Yeah. So yeah, social media can be terrible if you decide to go and look at terrible stuff and post terrible stuff and be a part of that. But to me, it's one of the most powerful tools on earth, in a good way.
Yep.
So
Yep. Well, and I think it's just being, like, being an informed consumer of what you're getting. Because what, this is another thing, and I was thinking about this today. When you did the comms check about 2 + 2 = 4,
mm-hmm.
There's so much stuff on Instagram, on Facebook, on just every social media platform, where it's telling you, buy this supplement for $39.95, and you can eat all the pizza, beer, and chicken wings you want, and you'll lose weight. And something like that gets 10,000 likes on Instagram, and I'm going like, hey, I'm going like, I'm trying to, kind of maybe, put some factual information out there, and it gets 36 likes. And,
Yeah.
and that's, my own jealousy going, but it's like, that doesn't add up.
You're
And kind
exactly
of
right.
looking at that stuff and going like, wait a second, I don't think that makes a lot of sense. Or just kind of, doing some fact checking. Like, there was something I saw scrolling Instagram for a few minutes, and it talked about how soda in Europe had less calories in it than America. And I'm going like, I don't know about that. So, got on, looked at a couple different things. Sure enough, it was right. But, I've done that as many times, and it's been, a complete load of garbage. So it's like, it's there, but you just gotta, slow down, look at what you're reading, understand some basic facts sometimes, and filter through what is good, and what is not so good.
Yep. And I think it's really important, that exactly what you just said. And also, when you're looking at the individual, the other human being that's flawed, just like you are, that is fallible, and if you're looking to another person for whatever it may be, inspiration, tools, guidance, whatever it may be, even if it's not on social media, even if it's just in your day-to-day life, whoever you're looking to, we all have mentors. We all have mentors. Whoever that mentor becomes in your life, do your fact checks on them too. Because I'm going to go ahead and tell you right now, brother, there's a lot of people out that are putting out stuff that get a lot of likes. They have millions of follows. And I'm sitting here looking at this person and I'm like, what have you done? What qualifies you to give advice? And I don't give advice. All I do is share my experiences. That's all I do. But people are giving advice, and you're like, okay, so you have millions of dollars. That doesn't qualify you. Hold on. How did you even accumulate all that wealth? Because that's not adding up either.
Yeah.
I see it so much, man, and it freaking drives me crazy. Again, 2 + 2 is not equaling 4, so I just divert my attention. As soon as it starts to drive me crazy, just divert my attention and forget about it,
See you later.
Yeah, man.
And that's, and it's, I don't remember where I was going to go with that.
No worries, man. No worries.
It's just, and I'm not, and in my Instagram page too, like I'm not a doctor. I'm not a dietitian. All of, the advice or suggestions that I give, it's not, I'm not trying to tell you to follow a ridiculously strict diet.
Mm-hmm.
It's just, hey, these are the things that I've done over the last 4 years of my life that have had a big impact onto where I am at today. And it's a lot of small little changes over a period of time that have added up.
Yep.
And what we put in our body, I feel like I'm performing. Like I ran a 5:58 mile a day before I turned 37. I'll bet my fastest mile time ever was probably like somewhere mid 6s when I was like 18 or 19 years old.
Yep.
And, and I did that from a period of, when I was, 33, 34, I was probably run a 10-minute mile at my fastest pace.
Yep.
But it's just slowly chipping away at it every day.
That's it, brother. That is it. Well, Brian, I want to wrap it up here, man, and I want to get for the listeners where they can find you and follow you, and also where they can find and follow Subjects to Change, man.
So Subjects to Change is at subjectstochange.com with the number 2. That's the blog. I probably write in there about once a week. I've got some, and it's one of those things where sometimes inspiration strikes. I got a binder, so I start to write stuff down in there so I don't kind of lose stuff, come back from a run, come back from an exercise, write stuff in there. I've got about 3 or 4 things that are kind of kicking around in my head right now, so it might be kind of rapid fire with some stuff, and then it might be 5 or 6, 7 days before the next little nugget, kind of drops and there's something new on there. You can find me on Instagram at Brian_in_search. And then I kind of have an art page, which is Subjects to Change. And that is Ricky Gates. You know Ricky Gates?
I do not. No, I do not.
So he's an ultra marathon runner. He ran across the country year and a half ago. He's got a new book out. It's pretty awesome. But he also ran every single street in San Francisco, 7x7 square. It's like 1,300 miles.
Wow.
So it's crazy to think that. So I've been running, and it's kind of gotten a little bit delayed because of COVID and staying, closer to the house and running the neighborhood a lot more. But, running Daytona Beach, every single street in Daytona Beach, and taking cool pictures of the things that I've seen along the way.
I saw that you were doing that. Yeah.
Yeah. In kind of more of an artistic standpoint. And it's like, I never really thought of myself as like a creative person or a photographer, but it just kind of happened. And, like, it's so awesome. We've got cameras, on ourselves all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just kind of going like, I'm not a photographer. Well, if you think that, you aren't a photographer, and you start looking and seeing things differently in the world and kind of changing your perspective. Because, there's a lot of things that I wasn't 6 months ago, that I am today.
Yep.
And all of that kind of, those two pages kind of link in between each other, but it's just kind of fun and different. And, it's an opportunity, because think about, how much of your town do you know? Like I've lived in Daytona for 8 years, and I knew 7 streets.
Mm-hmm.
And there's some cool stuff, and there's like that page that's a wave wall that's on the subjects to change page, that first picture.
Yep.
That's like 250 yards from my house, and I'd never ever seen it before.
Isn't that wild, dude?
Until I went running, and it's like, that thing is so cool. But like, how much of your town haven't you seen? And you start running, and then people are like, why is that guy running the same? Like, these people talk to you, and then it's an opportunity to like talk to people about what you're doing, and just completely random people. So I can't suggest that enough to people. I mean, it's such a cool, fun thing to do.
That is really cool, man. I really like the idea of that, dude. And especially for people that are living in town and don't necessarily have access to trails right out their backyard, and they want to have a really cool adventure and broaden their perspectives with what they have right there. I mean,
yeah,
what an awesome mission, man. And
yeah.
Brian, you're crushing it, man. I mean, with everything that you're doing, all the content that you put out, it's really professional, really fun. You're doing a great job, brother. I cannot encourage you any more. Just keep doing what you're doing, man.
Yeah.
And thank you so much for taking the time to come on here, share with me, and share with our audience, with your audience. We're 307 Project, man. Like we're all in this together, man. So, it's been a really good conversation, man. I
Awesome,
really
man.
enjoyed it.
This has been so cool, because, randomly stumbling across you through a Rich Roll podcast, at 10:30 at night after a run, and just being so absorbed in what you were talking about, and then kind of coming full circle and being here with you, and just like, you and I have, like I said, we've gone on a lot of car rides together.
Yeah.
And it's so cool, and it just, it motivates me even more to continue to put that out, and just work to be the best version of myself. And hopefully, you've given me a lot of tools that have changed my life, and hopefully that's something that I can do for somebody else. And just
well, there's no hopefully to it, brother. You just delivered right here today. So you can check that box for this episode, man. And
cool.
I can't wait to make my peanut butter tomorrow, brother.
That'll be delicious. Let me know.
All right. I may make a little post about it, man. So, all right, brother. Well, we'll wrap it up right here. Again, thank you so much. And I'm sure we will be in touch. This
Beautiful.
is the 307 podcast. Nuff Said.